Ajaz Patel was the only New Zealand player alive the last time they went to India and won a test match. That is an entire generation of pretty good cricketers and some pretty handy teams travelling over to India and losing. There is no doubt that the conditions played a part on day two, but so did the New Zealand fielding and Ratchan Ravindra's counter-attack with the bat. So to throw this win away as a fluke of the Bengaluru rain is unfair. Let's be honest, New Zealand have been coming to India for almost 40 years to lose. Support us on Patreon and help us keep making our content. Join for exclusive perks like the AMAs, the live calls, and to chat with me directly on Discord. You can also enjoy ad-free content, early podcasts, and access to my emailer. I'm still trying to get my head over the last couple of weeks of international cricket. Remember, Bangladesh went to Pakistan and they won the series 2-0. India then made a test match result out of nothing more than will and intent. England beat Pakistan after Pakistan scored like 550 runs. Pakistan beat England after that test match had happened. Even women's cricket has had two incredible upsets and maybe the most unlikely final pairing that we would ever see. Like something crazy has been going on in international cricket. And New Zealand bowling out India for 46, having a 350 run lead, still making it feel like they might lose the game at times, is right up there. But New Zealand have been traveling to India for a very long time and not winning. And to go up against this incredible of home team, when your side is in transition, when your captain has just given up his position of recent times, means that you think it would be even less likely that we're going to go over and break this. And of course, New Zealand are uniquely set up to be shit in India. They have Dan Vittori and John Bracewell. And outside of that, really not that much else. I mean, even when New Zealand have a good spinner, they usually only have one. I mean, if New Zealand are not the worst spin bowling country, then they are certainly in the conversation. In fact, if New Zealand are not the worst spin bowling country in Asia, then again, I still think they are very much in that conversation. And if New Zealand are not the worst spin bowling country in India, then again, they are in that conversation. I mean, we've had a look at New Zealand versus Indian spinners in the same matches. And I suppose this could be worse. But there is quite clearly a difference here. And there's nothing that I'm showing you on the screen at the moment, or that I've been talking about at all, that would confuse you in any way. However, I don't just want this to be about the bowlers, because I think that would be very unfair. New Zealand batters have also not been particularly good. This is a collection of the Western teams and how they've gone in win percentage when we talk about Asia. And if you look at these sides, specifically what you will see is that a lot of these teams actually have a lot of good players against spin. Garfield Sobers and Viv Richards and Brian Lara, Shivnaran Chandrapal. Australia have had Mike Hussey and Neil Harvey, plus other players who are also really good against spin. England have Joe Root at the moment, but if you go back through their history, a lot of very good players against spin. South Africa had Smith, Callis, Amla, lots of good players of spin again. That list is really short when you start thinking about New Zealand players against spin. So New Zealand just don't have that level of batting to fall back on. So it means that when they're in Asia, or specifically India, they don't have the amount of runs that they can put pressure back on the opposition, and then they can't take any wickets because if they have one good spinner, they probably don't have two. They almost certainly never have three. And so in India, all of this plays out, right? West Indies have always been a very good team when they've traveled to India. Australia have been very dominant elsewhere and not as dominant in India, but able to get regular wins. England have had some periods where they've played some very good cricket there. And Pakistan have had a lot of draws in India, but they've also won series over there. And then you've got New Zealand. And of course, India being the best at bowling spin and the best at playing spin, sometimes simultaneously, plus having wickets that really, really spin, which means New Zealand are touring with just this incredible natural disadvantage. And that is, of course, because New Zealand is a historically terrible place to bowl spin. However, Australia, West Indies and Pakistan are all worse, but they have produced better spinners and also better players of spin. And perhaps average isn't the best way of looking at it. It's maybe more to do with the fact of how little spin is bowled or played within New Zealand. It is very hard to get better at it if you're never bowling it or never facing it. So everything I've just told you is exactly what you know. New Zealand has not played spin very well, they've not found very many spinners, and then they go to India and they have to come up against both of those issues again and again. It's not just India, they're also not very good in Asia, again and again. However, this test wasn't like that. This was a seam-friendly wicket. In fact, at some stages the ball was swinging, some stages it was seaming, at some stages there was extra bounce, there was even a little bit of lower bounce. There were so many things going on for the seamers in this game. And sometimes you get wickets like that in India. It's not as if seam bowlers never get anything out of these wickets. But what is rarer is to have a wicket that is really heavily weighted towards seam bowlers getting wickets and not spin bowlers. Usually when the quicks are doing well in India, the spinners are still handy and sometimes even better than handy, and sometimes they're just as good. In this match, if you bowled seam up, you were brilliant. If you tried to spin the ball, you were horrendous. But not only did the tweakers not take any wickets, they also went at almost 2 runs and over more. They were getting absolutely met. Bowling spin on this wicket didn't help all that much. And remember, New Zealand had 3 seamers and 2 spinners, and India had the opposite of that. We don't have Hawkeye data and we don't have ball-by-ball records all the way through, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is the most seam-friendly wicket that New Zealand has ever had when touring India. In 1969, they won a test in India, and at the same time, they won a series in Pakistan. So we know they were a pretty good touring side of Asia in that period. And checking the scorecard of the test that they won, it was their spinner, Hadley Howarth, who completely outshone their seamers, even Bob Kunis. Kunis. Really is neither one thing nor the other. In 1988, they upgraded Kunis to Richard Hadley, taking a 6-for, as was the law because he had to take wickets in pretty much every game he played. But the man of the match was their spinner, John Bracewell. And outside of Hadley, if you have a look at the whole scorecard, there was a lot of wickets taken by spinners. So I think we could safely say, without any added data needed, that this was the most movement off a pitch that New Zealand seamers have ever had in India. Plus, it also swung and there was variable bounce. Not to mention that one stage Rishabh Pant hit a 6 so big that he actually found a magic ball for New Zealand. These were ideal conditions when you have an extra seamer in your attack, and also when you have a couple of hit-the-wicket bowlers in Henry and Will O'Rourke. And there is absolutely no doubt that a lot went their way. For instance, Tom Latham has said that he would have batted first if he had won the toss. A lot of people saying that Rohit Sharma made a huge mistake, but the truth is, no one thought this wicket was going to be anything like that. Rohit was unlucky with the toss, but also because they were missing an extra seamer, it meant it was even more unlucky. And there will be people pointing to Rohit's overall captaincy. I don't think once you take the toss away, it was that bad. But there was a couple of really interesting decisions, like the fact that he didn't use Jasprit Bumrah when Tim Southee first came to the crease. And he seemed to have misplaced Ashwin during the 4th innings. There is simply no other way of putting it than a lot of things went New Zealand's way. However, think about this. If you are a team and you have spent decades and decades coming to India and getting bupkis, you're playing one of the greatest and also one of the most unique touring challenges that has ever existed in cricket. And you have 2 awesome days where you roll the team for 46, you have a 350-run lead, and then Tim Southee outscores the opposition entirely. And yet, late on day 4, you are still somehow in a dogfight, and India is back in front, literally in terms of runs and figuratively in terms of the game. So from that point forward, New Zealand had to overcome set Indian batters, a long order, Jasprit Bumrah hooping it around, Jadeja out of the foot marks, and about 40 years of depressing history. New Zealand sent a better team to India a few years back, and all they got was a stolen last ball draw. This team is in development, and it just took a test win and did it 8 wickets down. New Zealand have been coming to India for almost 40 years to lose. This time, they won. I have a book out with Abhishek Mukherjee, and it is called Overthrowing Cricket's Empire. And it's about the stories of how each team beat England for the first time. We go all the way back to the demon Fred Spofforth getting annoyed at W.G. Grace for acting a little bit like Alex Carey. And then we come all the way to present times with Rashid Khan's England's redemption. We cover every single team to beat England in a major international, but we also talk about the incredible stories like the barefoot basher from Fiji that almost played for New Zealand. In fact, this book is full of tales like that, like how Pakistan lost a top batter after he was on the run from an angry husband of a movie star he was having an affair with, and also how one future captain of his nation realised he might have to go out and bat at Lords and that he didn't own his own pads. Cricket was used as a tool by the Empire, but what happens when those nations grow up and get good at it? Find Overthrowing Cricket's Empire on Amazon today.